Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uh, I talked to you a little bit yesterday about a little surprise that I had coming in the mail, and here it is. We're going to unbox this today. This is a new product from Klim. Let me get the box out here, and I'll show you what I've got. Here we go. The Adventure GTX boot. Now, those of you who know me well, or at least who keep up with PBR Mondays, know that I've worked with the Klim folks for years. I really like all those guys. They're a local company. They're up in Rigby, and I've had about a decade-long relationship with them now that was based on the fact that as a physicist, I was always interested in trying to people that are in physics do all kinds of things, but a lot of them, build nuclear reactors and stuff like that. And I did all that stuff. But the thing that I was always kind of interested in was using physics to make the everyday world better, especially things that I felt passionate about. Music, for instance. I spent a lot of time analyzing music from a physical perspective because it interested me, and it helped me learn some things about how musical instruments work and how to make improvements in audio systems and things like that. And I felt the same way about power sports. So about a decade or so ago, I forget even how it initially happened, but I kind of got hooked up with some folks at Klim a little bit. We talked technically about their products, and I remember being really impressed the first time I actually had to be forced to wear Klim gear for the first time because I thought it was stuff for rich dual sport dweebs, and I wouldn't have anything to do with it. A guy at a local shop actually forced me to wear some Klim gear. He said, "You take this. If you don't like it, you can give it back to me and I won't charge you anything for it. But you're going to buy it after you wear it." And he was right. I'm going to go see that guy this afternoon, by the way. He's still at that shop. So at some point, I got hooked up with those guys. We started talking technically about stuff. Many of you know that I've worked with them on their helmets, the ventilation, the acoustics in their line of helmets. And I've been working with them lately on colors. You all know that I'm pretty passionate about the fact that I think dark colors are pretty inappropriate for riding in the sunshine. They get all that stuff, and this year they've got some lighter color swatches that are returning to their lineup. John Summers sent me a text message just the other day that showed me that armor that I raved about last year is now coming in a light color swatch. The only thing I didn't like about their undershirt armor last year was that the color that was available was black. So over the years, we've talked a lot about not just dual sport kind of equipment and motocross kind of equipment. And Klim doesn't do a lot of motocross stuff. They do some, but mostly they are for dual sport riders. And dual sport is a huge spectrum inside of the motorcycle world that goes all the way from, people riding great big, KTM, now Harley Davidson and BMW motorcycles around the world to guys that are more like us that are riding, 250 and 300 cc two-strokes down gnarly trails in the high mountains. And dual sport encompasses all of that. Well, Klim happens to have people working in Rigby that also encompass the full spectrum of our sport. So the thing I've always enjoyed working with Klim, about working with Klim the most, is that there's someone up there that you can talk with that understands exactly what you're talking about when you say, look, this piece of equipment needs to do this. There's somebody up there that gets all of that stuff. And most of the people that work there pretty much get all that stuff because they ride a lot of different kinds of stuff. I've known those guys for years, and a lot of those guys up there are brilliant riders. There are people that have competed at Erzberg who work just up the road in Rigby. There are people that have competed in all kinds of big name races and stuff, King of the Motos, things like that. Those guys, they get the kind of riding that we do. And that's a mighty long way of saying that as a company, I've always found that Klim is incredibly responsive to what they deem to be productive or intelligent input about their products. If you point out something that needs changing and you've got the data to back it up, they're going to listen to what you say. And the other cool thing about working with clients I've ever worked with in any industry is as responsive to customer input. If you tell them, look, this is a good product, this is what we like about it, but this is what we think can be improved. And once again, you have some standing or you have some data to back up what you're saying, they're going to act on it. Now, they're like any big company, and Klim is a pretty big company these days. You know, you don't turn the Queen Mary on a dime, but they will articulate what they consider to be a good vision into a product probably more quickly than just about any other company of my acquaintance. And that's not damning others by saying that, by the way. There's a lot of wonderful people that work in the power sports and, for that matter, the audio industry, which is the other industry I've done a lot of work in. But Klim is unique because they're just up the road from me, and I know all those guys. So one of the things that we've talked about through the years that's been a really difficult vision to articulate, not because it's hard to actually build the stuff, but because it's difficult to get past regulatory agencies, is what do you do for people who ride their dirt bikes 15 or 20 miles an hour through the woods? Now, I want you to think about that. Most of the time, when you're riding the gnarly trails that guys like us and women like us like to ride, you're not riding 50 miles an hour. You know, you're generally poking through the woods at a slightly slower pace. Now, think about the equipment that you wear. Plastic boots, you know, DOT, ECE, Snell-approved helmets, all that kind of stuff. It's heavy, and in many cases, it's too much for somebody that's riding at a trail pace. If you look at downhill mountain bikers are riding pretty doggone fast through the trees, but you don't see those guys wearing some of the stuff that we wear, and that's because the regulatory agencies, the licensing agencies that are involved in anything that has anything to do with power sports, both because of licensing and also because of liability issues, demand certain things. And those demands tend to make things kind of heavy. The helmets that we wear, for instance, you know, if they're DOT, Snell, ECE approved, they have to have certain characteristics that are going to make them heavy. And they're brilliant for their intended use. But what I've always argued is that, look, sometimes for people that ride exclusively single track, some of that stuff is just too much. There's some bulk, there's some lack of ventilation. There's a lot of things that make it counterproductive for the person that's riding all day at 15 or 20 miles an hour down slow trails. Perhaps we look to mountain biking. We might find some things there that are good. I have some downhill mountain bike helmets that I occasionally ride when I'm just going to go out and ride the trails behind my house. The single track trails behind my house are very slow. There's no place where you're really going to wick it open. And I've got a full face mountain bike helmet that is pretty doggone good. The ventilation in it's good. It's incredibly lightweight. It's got much better vision than any of my motocross helmets. Klim's tried to address that in the helmets that they make. Since I've worked with them on helmets, it's a discussion that we've had many times. You know, how do we make a helmet that satisfies what all these regulatory agencies that we have to keep happy want, but at the same time is functional, not just for dual sport guys and people that are out riding on the highway and stuff, but we also want to build something for the guy that's the hardcore trail rider that doesn't need all that. And it turns out, you know, within the realm of what's humanly possible, there's just not a lot you can do. If you're a power sports company, you have to meet certain licensing and technical criteria, and that's just all there is to it. So the helmets are what they are, and my solution to that has been, again, just to find a really good downhill mountain bike helmet for when I'm going to be out riding stuff that I know I'm going to be riding pretty slow. Well, boots are the same way. You know, hard plastic boots come out of motocross, and they're designed and built. And by the way, boots are incredibly important. If you gave me a choice, held a gun to my head and said, you can go for a ride this afternoon, but you're either going to leave behind your boots or leave behind your helmet, that might not be an easy choice because your boots typically get whacked, or mine do anyway, just about every time I go out. I hit a foot on something. And, you know, I only land on my head every once in a while, despite what you may think. So what are you going to do? Those hard plastic boots are brilliant at protection. I mean, they really do protect your feet. You know, I've taken hits that have almost shorn off a foot peg, and, you know, my foot's still reasonably intact after that. They're really, really good. But the problem with hard plastic boots is that they're incredibly uncomfortable. And a common complaint that I've heard from basically two groups of people in our sport, Tour of Idaho people and people that spend an awful lot of time out sawing and maintaining trail, is that plastic motocross boots just kill their feet. The two best that I've discovered, I really like the CD line of boots a lot, and I've worn the CD Crossfires and the Crossfire 2s. I think they're brilliant boots. They're very good. The boots I wear now are the Garnier SG12s, and I've had several pairs of those. They have a slightly roomier toe box, and I have kind of a fat foot in the front, so that helps me a little bit just because the front of my foot's so wide. It just naturally fits my foot better. But I have to go see my buddy Jason Smoot, who's the boot whisperer, every time I get a new set of boots, and he's got to go in and build me up a footbed, and we got to shim this and shim that, and it's a lot of work to get them comfortable. And the last time I rode the Tour, I rode it in the set of SG12s that I have right now. It killed me. Like by the end of the third day, my feet were my biggest problem. It just kills you logging the miles that you got to log. You got to get on and off your bike a lot. You have to walk around every once in a while, those things. And just like getting off to saw log, it was such torture to walk around in those boots. It was better once you got back on the bike, but whenever you were walking around in them, after a few days, it just killed me. And at night, it would keep me up. My feet hurt so bad. They were so uncomfortable in those boots. And the SG12s are a comfortable boot. They're really good for a day or so. So the last few years, I've kind of almost given up wearing my plastic motocross boots when I'm out sawing, just because after a half day, your feet are done. They wear out before anything else, just walking around those doggone boots. Walking up and down hills really hard because they don't really have much of a sole in the bottom. So starting last year, I started looking for some alternatives. And I talked to the guys at Klim about this quite a bit, and they have the same concerns. Those guys spend an awful lot of time maintaining the trails that they use up around Rigby, and we all agree that that motocross boots suck on days when you're out sawing trail. So over the years, we discussed what we thought might go into a boot that would be admittedly not as protective as a plastic motocross boot, but again, for a person that's riding down a trail, you know, how much protection do you actually need? I mean, yeah, you're going to hit rocks and stuff, so you want there to be some protection. You certainly don't want to do it, you know, in any kind of a light duty boot. But could you soften up the boot? Could you give it a lot of protection up front where you're in the toe area, in the toe box, where you're likely to take a hit? Could you, give yourself a lot of protection in the shin and stuff like that? But could you make it more flexible? Could you put a lug sole on it or some sort of a sole that's better for walking around? Could you just make the thing more comfortable to wear all day long? Now, the Adventure GTX boot, I don't think it came up directly as a result of those conversations. That this is a dual sport boot. They market it as a dual sport boot. But I did see it come up in the catalog this year. So, I called the folks at Klim that I talk with a lot, my friends, and I said, look, I see that you have this boot. You know, it's similar to something that we've discussed over the years. Talk to me about it. Tell me what you like and don't like about your own boot. What would you wear it for? What would you not wear it for? And about 10 minutes into that conversation, they said, well, why don't we send you a pair and you can tell us what you think about it. So here it is. And I tell you what, I haven't put it on yet, but just looking at this thing, I can tell you right now that I think this boot is just fine based on my preliminary inspection of it for probably riding trails at a slow pace, and definitely it's going to be just fine for days when I'm out sawing. Now, I'm getting ready to go to the Mojave Desert in about 2 weeks, and that's going to be the inaugural run of this boot. I'm going to wear it out in the Mojave, but this spring, when I'm sawing, I'll wear this boot all the time, and I'm telling you what, right now, I haven't worn it yet, so this is an extremely premature sort of a prediction about this boot, but I'm pretty much thinking the next time I do the Tour of Idaho, it may be something like this that's on my feet. Now, I know others of you have gone through this exact same thing. I know that Forma makes a boot that's similar to this that has quite a following, and I've never worn a set of Forma boots. I've seen them an awful lot. But there are some things about the Formas, again, having not worn them, I'm speaking out of my hiney a little bit on this, but there are some things just looking at them that I didn't like. This boot addresses all of the things about the Forma that I didn't quite like. It's a Gore-Tex boot. It's got something kind of interesting. It's got this little BOA system in the back that's supposed to help firm the thing up. So it's a softer boot than your plastic boots, but you can kind of firm the thing up so that it still gives you support in the ankle area there. I really like the sole. Look at that. That is a sole that I think I can work with when I'm walking around. It's got a really big toe box on it, but it does have a shifter pad there. And I don't think, I mean, this is bigger than the toe box in my SG12s, which already have a big toe box. But I think I'll still be able to get that under a shifter. And there's some plastic reinforcement in places where it really needs to be. But this thing is pretty beefy up front. It's not soft like you would think that something like this might be. Now, Klim doesn't claim at all that this is a technical riding boot. That's not their claim. They say this is a dual sport boot, and that's the only way they market it. So I'm the one that's going to go out on a limb here and say that, I think that I'm going to give this a try, and I'm going to see what it does, because this may solve two problems that I have. One, my feet kill me when I'm sawing trail, and two, my feet kill me after about 3 days of Tour of Idaho style riding. First couple days I can get through. But by the time you've logged 400 or 500 miles over 3 or 4 days in a set of any kind of traditional motocross boot, your feet are just going to kill you. And that's a very common complaint that I hear. People deal with it by wearing their boots loose. But when you don't wear your boot tight, it's kind of not able to do some of the things that it's supposed to do anyway. So we'll see how this experiment goes. But I'm pretty excited about this. When I unboxed the boot just before I came on camera here, I was really excited because it was more than I was expecting based on what I'd read in Klim's description of the book. I'd looked around. A few people have gotten these already, and there are a few little reviews out there. And like me, hardly anybody's had a chance to ride in it yet because it's a new product. But I'll have 300 or 400 miles in these things within a couple of weeks. And I'll be able to let you know what I think. I'm really excited about it. Klim, thanks very much for the hookup on these boots, and I'll definitely be wearing them often. In fact, I'll probably wear them exclusively unless I find a reason not to, and we'll figure out what they'll do and what they don't do. But I think we might be on to something pretty good here, Tour of Idaho-wise, because this looks to me to be way better than the hiking boots and the logging boots that I've seen some of you show up in. Look, I completely get that. There are about 30% of the people that show up here are not wearing plastic motocross boots. They're wearing something else. Logging boots are pretty common. Construction worker boots are pretty common, and I get why people do that, because your motocross boots hurt when you ride as much as we ride on Tour of Idaho kind of rides. You need something else. So hopefully this is it. That's all I wanted to do this afternoon. I feel like I owe the guys at Klim a little bit of love, and I wanted to unbox this publicly for hooking me up with a set of boots. And I'm really excited about these things, and we'll see how it goes. If it works, I'll be happy to tell you about it. But if it doesn't work, I'll tell you that too. It's still a great boot. I hope it's a great boot for our purpose, and we'll see how that all works out. Now, I know that some of you out there right now, I get this. People that ride motorcycles are just like people that play guitars. They're incredibly opinionated, and sometimes nothing that you tell them is going to get them off that opinion. But I want you to just think about it a little bit. I know I'm asking a lot again of some critics, but I want you to just consider the concept of how your needs can be different if you're riding trails all the time. Now, I know some of you are saying right now, well, I ride trails at 50 miles an hour. Well, good for you. But the trails that I ride, I don't ride at 50 miles an hour, and I don't know anybody else that does either. They're technical trails, and you're going a good deal slower. I know that because there's never been an alternative, all of us have used traditional motocross gear. I see guys out with plastic roost guards riding technical stuff. I don't think it does you a bit of good, but I see a lot of people doing it just because that's the way it's done. What I'm asking you to do is think outside of that box a little bit. Do you need that plastic roost guard when you're out riding a trail? Do you really need the DOT Snell ECE approved helmet that's really heavy, has limited visibility, and the ventilation is not as good as something that's maybe got big vents cut in it? I don't know. I don't know whether I'm right about that or not. I don't know. But you know what? I think it's a question that's worthy of asking, and I think it's a worthy topic to spend some time investigating. How much is enough protection? Beyond that is too much bad. And I maintain that it may be. If you have more protection than you need, it's heavier. It doesn't ventilate as well. It makes you hot and it makes you tired. It limits your vision. It limits your hearing. All of those things come into play too. So I think you have to strike a balance in the protective gear that you wear. And for Tour of Idaho style riding, where fatigue is a big enough issue already, I think it's not asking too much for it to be comfortable. And that's just what I want you to think about. So anyway, I'll get into these things and I'll get back to you and let you know what's up. Got to get out right now. I'm cleaning out my shop today. I'm putting new batteries in all my motorcycles today. And my buddies that I'm going to go ride with in the Mojave are showing up tonight to drop off a couple of bikes here. So my reintroduction to one of my favorite activities, riding motorcycles in the outdoors, is getting ready to commence again after pretty much a year off. I'm super stoked. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I'll see you for PBR Monday. I'll get up a topic sometime this afternoon and get the event announcement up. By the way, every time we schedule an event on this page, there's always somebody that asks, well, where's the invite for the event? There's really not one. All you have to do is be around at 7 o'clock and it'll pop up. StreamYard pops up on the Tour of Idaho page, and then all you do is accept the invite and you're there. Thanks a lot, everybody. Good Friday afternoon. Be seeing you Monday night. Cheers.